Thanksgiving was supposed to be safe. Warm lights turkey, everyone smiling like we were a normal family. I waited until plates were full and mouths were busy. Then I asked my parents if the hospital had mailed the surgery appointment. My dad didn't even look up. They did, he said, calm as weather. But we used your surgery money for your brother's birthday. He only has one birthday a year. I set my fork down so slowly it felt like time cracked. So, I guess you still don't know who really needs the surgery. The room drained of color. My stepmom froze mid-gravy. My brother stared at his plate like it could save him. Then my mom's voice came out thin and scared. So, who is it? My name is Jet Armitage. And I've been carrying my family for so long I forgot what it feels like to breathe. Before I tell you what happened next, can you drop a simple hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from? Sometimes just knowing someone is there makes all the difference. And if you've ever been the one expected to pay for everyone's peace, please subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this story. I'm not here for pity. I'm here because I need to be heard. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. Thanksgiving always made me feel like I was walking onto a movie set. Same cabin walls, same roaring fire, same damn perfectly set table with perfectly placed napkins, wine glasses, and fake laughter. I'm Jet Armitage, 31 years old. I don't live in Flagstaff anymore, haven't for years. My job has me bouncing between cities, contracts, and terminals. I show up for the holidays with bottles of wine and clean dress shirts and play the role I've been assigned, the dependable older brother who has it all together, the one who made it. Every time I return home, I remind myself to stay in character. That night, the script was the same. Raylan, my father, set the tone with talk about how this family runs on discipline, while Cressida, my stepmother, orchestrated the evening with over-the-top cheer. She kept saying things like, "Let's keep it light tonight." Okay? Just smiles, just thanks. It was her version of control, sugar-coated, but still control. Body, my 27-year-old brother, strolled in late wearing a hoodie that probably cost more than my flight nose buried in his phone. He flopped into his seat like the room belonged to him, like he was the lead character in some influencer documentary. I waited. That's what you learn to do when you grow up in this house. You wait for the right moment. You don't speak unless you know how to make it land. So I let them get a few bites in. Chewing slows down the instinct to argue. Timing matters when you're about to change the weather in a room. "Hey," I said casually, "did the hospital send the surgery appointment yet?" It was a soft pitch. Nothing aggressive. But it landed hard. Raylan didn't even flinch. He looked at Cressida, then back at me with a calm that felt rehearsed. "They did," he said, reaching for more stuffing. "But we used your surgery money for Bodhi's birthday. He only has one birthday a year." My fork stopped mid-air. I set it down deliberately. "So, I guess you still don't know who really needs the surgery." The room snapped like glass. Silence poured in. Raylan's face shifted instantly, the color drained like he'd just realized he signed a confession under oath. Cressida froze, ladle of gravy still in the air. Even Bodhi looked up from his screen, blinking like I'd just spoken a language he didn't recognize. Cressida's voice cracked. "So, who is it?" Exactly what I wanted her to ask. I didn't answer. I let the silence do the talking. I wanted them to sit in that discomfort, to realize they had spent money without understanding what they were taking. That their decision wasn't just selfish, it was blind, dangerous. I pushed back from the table, my appetite gone. Upstairs in the dim light of the guest room, I opened the app, tied to the health fund I'd built brick by brick over the past year. The number glared back 0.00. Not reduced, not partially withdrawn, gone. Every last dollar. Someone had known exactly where to go and exactly how to take everything. This wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't an accident. This was war. To understand why that money meant what it did, why it wasn't really mine to begin with, you have to rewind 11 months. Back to a night when Bodhi passed out drunk on my couch in Denver. He'd come through town for a brand collab that was really just an excuse to party and show off on someone else's dime. I found him passed out half on the floor, half on the cushions, still wearing a leather jacket and one sneaker. As I pulled a blanket over him, I noticed something wrong. His fingers, they were swollen red, stiff like bent twigs. I touched one and he flinched in his sleep. He'd been complaining about joint pain for months, blaming old sports injuries. But the swelling was off, consistent. It looked like something deeper, systemic. I knew I couldn't bring this to the family. Raylan would say it's weakness. Cressida would dramatize it into a narrative she could milk. And Bodhi, if he suspected anything serious, he'd run from it. He couldn't risk looking vulnerable, not when his brand was built on being effortlessly perfect. So I reached out to the only person I trusted with both medicine and discretion, Dr. Kellen Rourke, my ex. We hadn't spoken in a while, but Kellen didn't ask questions. He ran every test possible, discreetly, quietly, thoroughly. The diagnosis hit harder than I expected: severe autoimmune arthritis progressing fast. The kind that doesn't wait around. If not treated within a narrow window, the damage to his joints could be permanent, irreversible. The treatment plan was aggressive. Injections, infusions, monitored physical therapy, and it wasn't cheap. The hospital required a hefty upfront deposit just to schedule the first phase. That night, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, I made a choice I'd made 100 times before. Without calling it one, I would fix it. Quietly. I created a medical trust under my name. Technically, the account belonged to me. But the only purpose it served was paying for Bodhi's treatment. I funneled every bonus check, every freelance side gig, every tax refund into that fund. I canceled trips, dropped purchases, lived lean. And I never told anyone. Instead, I crafted a story they would care about. I told the family vaguely, offhandedly, that I might need surgery. Something minor, just a heads up, something they wouldn't question. Because when I'm the patient, they listen. They worry. They stay close. But if they knew the surgery was bodies, they'd feel relieved. Oh, Jet's got it handled. The moment they know I'm handling something, they wash their hands of it. So I used myself as the decoy, the shield. What I didn't account for was the vulnerability I'd built into the system. Since I travel so often, I'd added an emergency clause. If I couldn't be reached, the fund could be accessed via email and phone verification by 2 trusted family members. That seemed safe at the time. What family would misuse medical money? I was wrong. The hospital had sent the official appointment confirmation, the date Bodhi needed to begin treatment, to the Flagstaff address. I hadn't even seen it. Raylan and Cressida had. They had the letter. They saw the urgency. They knew what the fund was for. And they took it anyway. Used it for a birthday party with fireworks, a private lodge, and influencers flown in for content. They didn't just steal money. They stole time. They stole the window we had. And that's when I realized something else. They didn't just want to be blind. They wanted to stay blind as long as someone else kept the lights on. The day after Thanksgiving, I stopped pretending. No more playing the composed, forgiving older brother. No more spinning the narrative that this was just a misunderstanding. I needed facts, numbers, digital footprints. I called Tanner Voss, the manager at the private bank who helped me set up the medical trust. Tanner sounded groggy. I'd called before 8 a.m. But the moment I said my name and mentioned the fund, his voice straightened. He remembered. Of course he did. That kind of fund wasn't typical. He pulled up the history. According to the system, the entire account had been withdrawn in a single disbursement, triggered via the emergency clause, Tanner explained. He walked me through it step by step, like a detective walking me through a break-in I hadn't even known had happened. Cressida called saying I was out of state on a consulting project. She claimed Bodhi was in a medical emergency and that she had authorization under the fund's emergency access protocol. She passed security, which included some personal questions and my birthday. Then Tanner said they received a confirmation email. From me. I asked for a copy. The email was polished, professional, worded like I would have written it, short, concise, referencing urgency, but controlled in tone. It matched my usual work style. The only issue, the email address was off. One extra T in my name. The difference was small enough that at a glance no one would notice. But I did. Whoever wrote that email didn't just guess. They knew how I wrote. They knew my habits. They'd studied me. This wasn't an impulsive act of desperation. This was planned, deliberate. They knew the fund existed. They knew the emergency clause could override standard procedures. They knew I was out of state and wouldn't be able to react in time. I asked Tanner for a trace on the transaction. Where did the money go? It started with a payment to an event planning firm in Sedona high-end niche, the kind of place that organized luxury wellness retreats and influencer weddings. From there, it fractured outward: a lodge reservation, a 5-piece jazz band, a fireworks contractor, invoices to a liquor vendor, and the final insult: payouts to a list of special guests who turned out to be creators and influencers. I went to Bodhi's page. His story highlights told me everything. There it was. Neon sign with his name, champagne fountains, drone footage of a house nestled in Red Rock Cliffs. Hashtags like grateful for me and another level. In one post, he was standing in front of a balloon wall, laughing, holding a glass of Dom, surrounded by people who were clearly there to be seen. He hadn't just enjoyed it. He'd basked in it. I clicked into an old group chat we shared, mostly muted on my end, and found a screenshot he'd posted the day before the event. Mom handled it. He'd written, "Funds cleared. Gonna be big." He might not have known it was medical money, but he knew it wasn't his, and he said nothing. That was the line for me. I'd overlooked things before: the overspending, the missed thank yous, the assumption I would always cover the fallout. But this wasn't passive entitlement. This was acceptance, complicity. So I acted. I closed every account tied to my name that had his on it, cut every authorized user, disabled the gas card, terminated auto-pay for the BMW I was still co-signed on, stopped the monthly wire for his penthouse rent. I wasn't emotional. I was surgical. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't explain myself. I didn't prepare a speech. I just shut the damn door. It was just past 2:00 a.m. when they came pounding on my door. Outside, snow drifted sideways in the wind, soft and sharp like razors in cotton. Inside my apartment was still the only sound, the low hum of the heater kicking in every few minutes. I'd spent the past 3 hours dismantling everything. Body's access to the credit line gone. Cressida's name on the travel card removed. Automatic payments for Raylan's BMW canceled. Shared accounts closed, balances, transferred passwords changed. I wasn't angry. I was calm in the way you get when you're done begging someone to understand. The buzzer rang once, then again. Then in a relentless rhythm, like someone was leaning on it with their whole hand. I checked the peephole. Raylan, Cressida, Body. All in winter coats, standing close together like a single organism, angry, drunk, entitled. I opened the door. I didn't say a word. They pushed past me like they owned the place. Like my boundaries were decorations they could sweep off the shelf. Cressida slammed a folder of printouts on my kitchen counter. Body's card was declined everywhere she snapped. He couldn't even pump gas tonight. His friends saw. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Raylan wasn't far behind. Lease payment on the BMW bounced. There's a repossession notice on the windshield. They'll be here in 48 hours to tow it. Body finally spoke. My landlord taped a 10-day eviction on the door. My roommate's freaking out. We're about to lose our place. His voice was thin, desperate, rehearsed. Not a single one of them said the word health. Not one question about the surgery. Not one word about the fund. It was all about gas, image cars, condos. I looked at them, quiet, steady. Do any of you understand what you spent that money on? Cressida waved her hand. That was a family decision. Body needed a proper birthday. It's once a year. You don't get it, there's pressure on him. People watch. Raylan's voice was ice. This family runs because of you. You don't get to turn the engine off. Cressida stepped closer. We know exactly what you did tonight. The cards, the accounts. You think we're stupid? She recited every step I'd taken line by line like she'd been studying my playbook. They didn't come to ask. They came to reverse the locks. No, I said flat and final. No, I won't reinstate anything. Body's 27. He has a driver's license and a phone full of brand deals. He can figure out how to pay rent. Raylan dropped his voice low, a voice he used when I was a kid and about to get punished. You think you have control now? You forget who raised you, who fed you. Cressida leaned in. You have 24 hours to undo this. If you don't, you'll see what we do to protect our family. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat. I stepped back, opened the door wide. Your 24 hours start now. They stared at me like I'd spoken a language none of them understood. Then slowly they left. I closed the door, turned the deadbolt, then the chain, then the top lock. I waited for guilt to rise the old familiar flood, but it didn't come. I checked my phone. One new message. Unknown number. You'll regret this. I believed it. But I also knew I wouldn't stop. The day started like I was living someone else's life. I dressed in layers, made coffee, joined a few client meetings over Zoom, even managed to reply to some emails. But none of it stuck. My body was moving through the motions of normalcy, but my mind was locked in a countdown ticking down from 24 hours like a silent bomb strapped to my chest. I checked the clock constantly, waiting, bracing. I didn't know what they'd do next, only that they would do something. By late afternoon, I was back home. The light outside was gray and dull, typical for a Flagstaff winter. As I bent to unlock my door, I noticed something on the floor. A thick manila envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name on the front in bold typed letters. I stood there for a second, door half open, envelope in hand, suddenly hyper aware of how quiet the hallway was. I carried it inside, locked the door behind me, and sat down at the kitchen island to open it. At the top of the first page, petition for guardianship, State of Arizona. My breath left me in a sharp rush. It was real. Filed by Raylan and Cressida, requesting the court to grant them full legal guardianship over me, as if I were an unstable, incapable dependent. The petition stated that I had recently exhibited paranoid, erratic, and hostile behavior, had cut off all support from family without explanation, and was isolated, emotionally unstable, and potentially at risk to myself or others. My hands tightened around the paper. This wasn't about getting money back. It was about control. Full-scale, court-approved control. If granted, they'd gain access to every account in my name. They could freeze my assets, make medical decisions on my behalf, even limit my ability to leave the state. They didn't need my agreement. They just needed enough paper to make me look broken. Tucked halfway through the packet was another document, voluntary guardianship agreement. It had bright yellow flags marking where to sign. A gentler option, I guessed, an off-ramp if I wanted to avoid court. It promised limited oversight, financial decisions only, but I knew better. Sign that form, and I'd be handing them the keys to my life. I kept flipping through the pages. They had done their homework, or rather their fabrication. There were quotes from supposed neighbors saying I kept to myself and often looked nervous or unwell. They included screenshots of recent bank activities showing I'd closed joint accounts and removed authorized users, framing it as impulsive. There was a text I'd sent to Badi telling him to get a job labeled as emotional abuse. Then came a note from a licensed therapist. I didn't recognize the name. The letter said the therapist had serious concerns for Jet Armitage's psychological well-being, citing cold, detached behavior and a lack of empathy, all red flags apparently for someone spiraling. I turned the page again. Emergency ex parte motion. They were asking the court to grant immediate temporary guardianship before any hearing could take place. It meant they wanted to freeze everything accounts movement decision-making right now, before I could even speak in my defense. I didn't need a lawyer. I needed a damn war strategist. I called the only name I had saved for emergencies, Mara Whitlock. I'd met her briefly during a corporate contract negotiation and kept her number because she didn't mince words. I sent her the documents within 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, she called back. Her voice was calm and precise. Do not sign anything, she said immediately. They're trying to preemptively strip your autonomy. And they've laid enough groundwork that a judge might grant them temporary power if we don't act. What do? I asked. We build your counter case, Mara replied. I need everything: asset lists, medical history, tax records, your original intent behind the fund, email logs, any proof that the email they used to authorize the withdrawal was faked, and everything about the Sedona event: receipts, photos, dates, guest lists. She warned me that guardianship laws could be twisted easily, especially if someone knew how to make a person look unstable. A single signature, even voluntary, can revoke your legal right to fight back. I didn't sleep that night. I spread every document across my kitchen table: trust account statements, photos from Bodhi's birthday, the forged email header, my boarding passes from work trips, calendars, call logs. It looked like a war room. Because it was. And I had to win. The next week turned me into two people. By day I was Jet, the consultant, leading calls, submitting project milestones, making clients feel like nothing was wrong. By night I became Jet, the defendant, scanning paperwork, tracking email headers, calling banks, documenting every interaction. My laptop became my battlefield. My printer never stopped humming. Mara's voice echoed in my head on repeat. If guilt doesn't work, they'll escalate. Be ready. I was ready. Or so I thought. One evening, snow was coming down thick. I stepped over a drift in front of my building and found a sealed envelope taped to my door. Certified delivery. From my company's HR department. Inside was a formal notice effective immediately: my health insurance had been terminated. Reason: fraudulent reimbursement claims exceeding $47,000. The document listed every claim submitted in the last 6 weeks, all under my name, all approved, all marked now as under investigation. Inpatient psychiatric hold. Inpatient addiction detox. Suicide watch observation. Each claim included my member ID, my date of birth, my full name, and an electronic signature nearly identical to mine. I called the insurance provider in a panic. A representative walked me through the data. Every claim had been filed through the provider portal using a verified provider account. Every credential matched. When I asked for the originating IP address, they hesitated, then read it out. I didn't even need to write it down. It was Raylan and Cressida's home address. While I'd been prepping legal defenses, they'd been building an alternate version of me on paper, a version that was unraveling, unstable, requiring medical intervention. And then they called the cops. At 1:30 a.m., I was jolted awake by pounding at my door. Red and blue lights bounced across the snow outside. 2 uniformed officers stood at the threshold. We received a welfare check request. A family member said you were suicidal, that they heard yelling and glass breaking. I blinked at them, groggy and confused. I let them in. I had to. They moved quickly, checking the bathroom, bedroom, under the bed, looking for pills, razors, broken mirrors. One officer glanced at me the whole time, clearly trying to assess if I was lucid. There was nothing to find. But that wasn't the point. This was about planting another flag in the narrative. A police record. Another mark on the trail of concerning behavior. After they left, one of them, a woman named Detective Lila Hart, stayed behind a moment longer. I've seen this before, she said quietly. Families trying to build a paper trail. If they do it right, it can destroy someone's credibility. She handed me her card. Next time someone calls in a welfare check, you call me. Let's document the pattern. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at my insurance provider's app. My coverage now read, "Cancelled, under investigation." This wasn't just about freezing my assets anymore. They wanted to erase me, turn me into a ghost of my own identity, unstable, uninsurable, legally untrustworthy. But they'd made one mistake. They left fingerprints. I gathered the HR notice, the insurance claims, the police report, and every digital trace of the fake records. I sent them all to Mara. She wrote back 2 words. Perfect. Now we have criminal evidence. I got served the papers in a grocery store parking lot halfway between the deli and the cart return. A thin man in a windbreaker walked straight up, asked for my name, and handed me a thick envelope before turning and disappearing like a ghost. At the top of the packet, notice of hearing, petition for guardianship. Set for 9:00 a.m. on Tuesday at the county courthouse. The presiding officer, Commissioner Dana Albright. In the days that followed, I didn't live. I prepared. Every waking hour became a drill. Mara and I built a war chest from the ground up. I printed every bank statement tied to the medical fund, annotated every line that traced back to Body's treatment, and pulled logs from Tanner Voss, the banker who'd authorized the withdrawal under false pretenses. We backed that with screenshots of Body's birthday party in Sedona, every tagged story, time-stamped post and payment that flowed into luxury rentals, fireworks, DJs, and influencer payments. I filed meeting logs and flight receipts to prove my mental clarity and work consistency. I pulled the HR letter, insurance notices, and metadata from every fraudulent claim. Mara had me sort the files by color-coded tabs, bank records, healthcare insurance witnesses, legal. Every file was labeled, every exhibit cross-referenced. Mara made me rehearse how to testify. No tangents, no emotion, no improvised explanations. Every answer should be short, refer to a document, and make them work to find a rebuttal. Raylan and Cressida had filed their own narrative, neatly curated, painfully polished. 11 witnesses they claimed: a psychiatrist, a barista, 2 former co-workers, a neighbor, and more. But Mara noticed the cracks. Every witness statement had been notarized on the same day, by the same notary, Brenda Kay. Several statements used the exact same phrasing, like they'd been written from a shared script. The night before court, Mara played me a phone call she'd recorded. One of the witnesses, a so-called concerned former co-worker, confessed they'd been paid $500 to sign a letter. They had no idea what it was for. The next morning, a thunderstorm slammed Flagstaff. I stepped through courthouse security, drenched from the knees down. Raylan and Cressida were seated at the petitioner's table, dressed in their Sunday best, brows furrowed in saintly concern. Gavin Sutter, their attorney, sat between them, muttering and adjusting his tie. Body sat behind them, hood up, scrolling his phone, earbuds in. He looked like a bored teenager, not someone whose medical future had been bartered for bottle service. Mara and I sat opposite. Her folders were fanned out like a general's battle plans. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. She had everything. Gavin opened with a performance. He painted me as a tragic case, a brilliant but troubled son whose paranoia had severed him from the family who loved him. He described how I'd isolated, withdrew support, and was at clear risk of self-harm or financial ruin. Then Commissioner Albright turned to us. "Does the respondent have anything beyond denial?" Mara stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call our first witness." She didn't waste time. No rebuttal, no delay. She cut straight to the jugular. "Our first witness is Dr. Kellen Rourke." A beat of silence. Raylan turned sharply. Cressida sat back like she'd been slapped. Body looked up. They didn't expect this. They weren't ready for the truth. Dr. Rourke took the stand, swore in, and began to speak with clinical precision. He explained Bodhi's diagnosis, a rapidly advancing autoimmune disorder attacking his joints. He detailed the narrow treatment window, what he called the golden window, and how missing it would lead to permanent damage. He described how I came to him quietly, without fanfare or pressure, seeking medical help for Bodhi when no one else would. He confirmed that the medical fund, the one Raylan and Cressida had raided, matched the cost of the hospital's early intervention protocol. He confirmed I'd named the fund under my own identity because I knew no one would take Body's illness seriously unless they feared losing me. Then Mara stood and submitted the key documents: fund setup, withdrawal authorizations, and the forged email, the one that mimicked my speech patterns, and sent all the money into a party planner's bank account. Dr. Rourke closed his testimony with one final dagger. "The money used to plan that party wasn't Jet's surgical fund," he said. "It was Bodhi's shot at preserving his mobility. And they knew it." Commissioner Albright paused. Gavin tried to object, but Mara raised a finger. She wasn't done. Next came the digital evidence transfers from the fund to Sedona Events LLC. Receipts for fireworks, live bands, influencer fees. A neon sign that read, "Body's World." Instagram stories tagged the same day the medical payment was supposed to go through. Body sat upright, earbuds out, watching the projector screen like it was showing his own execution. Cressida tried to object on grounds of privacy, but Albright overruled. He posted it publicly, the commissioner said. "It's relevant." Then came the final wave. Mara submitted the letter from HR, the insurance fraud reports, and IP tracing logs pointing to Raylan's house. She called Detective Lila Hart to testify, who described the 1:30 a.m. welfare check as unfounded and said her office suspected a pattern of harassment. Finally, Mara revealed that 2 of Raylan and Cressida's witnesses had already recanted. She submitted their new sworn affidavits admitting they were paid to sign false statements, and the cherry on top notary Brenda Kay had notarized all 11 statements on the same date, a violation of professional conduct. The documents were officially under review. Commissioner Albright called a recess, reviewed the files, then returned 20 minutes later with the verdict. There is no credible evidence that Mr. Jet Armitage lacks capacity. The petition for guardianship was filed under false pretenses and supported by fabricated or manipulated evidence. I hereby dismiss the petition in full and order petitioners to pay all court and legal fees incurred by the respondent. Additionally, I am referring this case to the County Prosecutor's Office for further investigation into possible fraud, perjury, and financial exploitation. She banged the gavel. It was over. I turned to look at Bodhi. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He looked like a man realizing the party he threw had cost him his body. After court, I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. Mara handed me a checklist, a battlefield debrief. Close all remaining joint accounts. Transfer assets into secure legal structures. Change all passwords, set up 2-factor authentication. Create an entirely new email infrastructure. Work with my employer to restore insurance and document the fraud. File official police reports for identity theft and cybercrime. I followed it like gospel. Meanwhile, the consequences began to unfold. For Bodhi, it came fast. Within 3 months, the disease advanced. His fingers stiffened. Grip strength deteriorated. He dropped brand deals. Influencer partnerships dried up. He started relying on heavier painkillers. He messaged me once, not to apologize, not to thank me. He asked if there was any way to fix this. He still thought I was the safety net. I never replied. For Raylan and Cressida, the collapse came through the very systems they weaponized. Legal fees drained them fast, court fees, investigations, audits. They were investigated for forging email communications, fraudulently draining a medical fund, paying for false testimony, filing false insurance claims, and when the walls closed in, they turned on each other. Cressida claimed Raylan orchestrated everything. Raylan said Cressida acted alone. So much for family unity. As for the house, the shrine of so many toxic Thanksgivings, it didn't survive either. Mounting debt forced it into foreclosure. The lodge-style cabin with its big fireplace and long dining table became just another asset on a public auction list. I didn't return their calls. I didn't save them. Because I knew if I so much as stepped inside that house, they'd spin my presence into another excuse to reclaim me. I sold off every remaining Thai Trust's titles, co-owned assets. I changed my number, my email. I transferred departments, then moved altogether. I landed in San Diego, a city with no snow, no pine trees, no family memories waiting to ambush me. I went back to therapy. For myself this time. Not to carry anyone, not to fix anyone, just to breathe again. I returned to Flagstaff only once for paperwork. I walked through the house like it was a crime scene, the living room where Thanksgiving unraveled, the kitchen table where I planned my legal defense. I left the keys on the counter, locked the door behind me, and I didn't look back. This is what I've learned. Love is not a line item. Family is not a hall pass to manipulate, coerce, or steal. And I don't owe anyone my destruction just because they share my blood. The peace I found didn't come from their downfall. It came from no longer needing to prove I deserved to be loved. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here writing this free from the people I once called family, I would have laughed in your face. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't believe it was allowed. For most of my life, I thought walking away made me selfish. I thought saying enough meant I was cruel. And I thought love, especially family love, was something you earned by enduring pain without complaint. But now I know the truth. Love without respect is manipulation. Family without accountability is a trap. And silence in the face of betrayal isn't strength, it's surrender. The hardest part wasn't exposing the lies. It wasn't hiring lawyers, filing reports, or sitting through a courtroom hearing while strangers debated whether I was mentally competent to run my own life. The hardest part was unlearning the belief that I was responsible for everyone else's comfort even when they were hurting me. It was walking away without feeling guilty. It was saving myself and letting them drown in the consequences they created. I didn't win because I was smarter. I won because for the first time I chose truth over guilt. I chose peace over performance. And I chose myself fully, unapologetically, and finally. People say blood is thicker than water, but they forget the full phrase. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose, the ones built on trust, respect, and integrity, mean more than biology ever will. So if you're someone reading this who's been told to keep the peace at the cost of your own well-being, if you've been made to believe that you owe people loyalty just because they share your last name, or if you've been gaslit into thinking your boundaries are betrayal, let me be clear, you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to protect your peace, your body, your mind, your money, your time. And no one, not even family, gets to weaponize love to make you forget your worth. This isn't a sob story. This is a survival story. And if it resonated with you, that means you've got your own story worth telling too. Thank you for walking with me through mine. If you want to hear more stories like this about truth, family healing, and reclaiming your power, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps bring more voices, more truth, and more closure to light. Subscribe, share, and stay tuned. The next chapter might just be yours.